Okay, so welcome to Women's Studies and LGBTQ Initiative. My name is Federico Lisondo, and I'm the Information and Technology intern. If you don't know the person you're sitting next to, take a couple minutes to say hi and introduce yourselves. Okay, so we wanted to begin by recognizing that we are on occupied land. This is Haudenosaunee land. So a couple of announcements. So tomorrow at 12 p.m. in the COOP conference room, Denise Contreras, the Assistant Director of Survivor Support Services, will give a brown bag talk on spirituality and healing process from sexual assault. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. as well, in Lathrop 207, there's an open safe zone training with food, of course. Then tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. in Love Auditorium, Alana screening Moonlight, followed by a conversation led by the Alana ambassadors. And then on Thursday at 11:30 a.m. in Lathrop 207, the network will host a brown bag on the Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner, the same program, coming next fall. And then on Friday at the Edge at 8 p.m. there's an annual drag ball with some of our LGBTQ initiative members and women's studies concentrators there as well. And then lastly, we have a workshop with Jennifer Patterson on April 17th at 6 p.m. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact Natasha, who's right here, to fill out the form. So quick description. So what types of loss feel nearly impossible to come back from? Can we dive into the wound, the loss, excavate it underneath what is living inside us? And in doing this work, can it foster a sense of personal and collective liberation? In this writing workshop, open to people who self-identify as survivors of violence and trauma, we will read poetry and write in response to a few prompts as we collectively hold and consider how trauma shows up in our bodies and what it can feel like to work to translate the complexity of traumatic experience into words. So again, contact Natasha Torres if you're interested, and make sure you sign up for that. And then if you forget any of this information, just look at a women's outreach email that we send weekly. And so a couple instructions before we begin. So if you need to leave during the presentation, please do so quietly as to not disturb the presentation. Please clean up around you once you're done. And then in terms of discarding trash, the bins are in the back. There's signs like put the trash in the trash can, the food stuff in the compost bin. And then lastly, if you can stay and help chairs, please do so, stacking chairs one by one and following that instructions. So now finally for the introducing today's brown bag. So today we have, it's part of Queerfest. Our panelists, Salote from the OUS Program Fellow, Romelia and Lucien, are all local experts on the topic of Steven Universe. Steven Universe is a television show on Cartoon Network. The show has been heralded as a feminist and queer-affirming series. Our panelists will highlight ways this show has offered children and adults ways to talk about consent, queer families, and body image. Please welcome our panelists.
Oh, okay. So I believe I have the first section tonight. Oh, we're gonna actually play a video for you first.
Well, building a house is not easy. How's that ukulele treating you?
Hello, Stephen.
Oh, hey, great job out there.
Thank you. Greg,
Oh, yes.
did you give Stephen that instrument?
Oh, yeah, he's picking it up so fast I'm running out of things to teach him. Steven, you want to play them the song you wrote? Come on, you wrote it for them. Seriously, he's really excited to live with you guys. It's all he talks about. Don't you want them to hear it?
Come on, Stephen.
Yeah, we'll like it, even if it's bad.
Well, it's true, though.
If you're evil and you're on the rise, you can count on
on the four of us taking you down. Cause we're good and evil never beats us. We'll win the fight and then go out and pizzas. We are the crystal gems. We'll always save the day. And if you think we can, we'll always find a way. That's why the people of this world believe in good amethyst and Pearl and Steven.
If you could only know what we really are when we arrived on Earth. From out beyond your star, we were amazed to find your beauty and your worth, and we will protect your kind, and we will protect your Earth, and we will protect your Earth, and we will protect you.
I will fight for the paper of free to live together and exist as we.
I will fight in the name of Rose Quartz and everything that she believed in.
I will fight for the world that's made in. The earth is everything I've ever known.
I will fight to be everything that everybody wants me to be when I'm grown. Other against us won't be easy, but we're not going to do it alone. We are the crystal gems.
We'll always save the day.
And if you think we can't,
We'll always find a way.
that's why we are
On this world,
Believe in.
golden
amethyst and pearl.
and Steven!
Alright, so that was the extended theme song from Steven Universe, and so just a quick synopsis. Steven Universe is the coming of age story of a boy named Steven as he grows up under the guidance of intergalactic queer guardians of the Earth known as the Crystal Gems. Together they have adventures saving each city and the world. Genderless but manifest themselves as female humanoids. Steven is the first half-human, half-gem. Steven Universe is the first Cartoon Network show solely created by a woman, Rebecca Shiver, who came out as bisexual in 2016. Not only does Steven Universe have a diverse set of characters, but also voices that play those characters. The Gems are all voiced by Dee Dee Mango, Michaela Dietz, and Estelle, and the show has many influential women guest stars, including Uzo Aduba, Nicki Minaj, and Patti LuPone, to name a few. The show was nominated for a GLAAD Media Award in 2017.
So I'm talking about queering families, and so if you watched the intro, which you just did, you saw that Stephen is raised by these three gems who are essentially his three mothers and Greg, and so three and Greg. Greg is great though. Don't downplay Greg. But a lot of what stood out to me when I saw that was just like the idea of queering families, which is talked about a lot in LGBTQ communities, and just how the normative family would have been like Stephen being raised by Greg and at least one of these gems, preferably his birth mother Rose Quartz, who had to give up her form to create Stephen. Yeah. So if you imagine being a small child, having and being a part of a family that isn't necessarily traditional, so that could be two moms, two dads, or even some type of polyamorous or polyamorous setup, or even just I know a lot of times in queer families there's you'll have a lesbian couple and a gay couple, and then one of the birth moms they all co-parent their children together, because they just the fathers will be the sperm donors, and then the lesbian mothers will carry the child and stuff like that, and there's a lot of dynamics involved, and Steven Universe really plays on that. And each of his parents they have like different characteristics and they support him in different ways. So Pearl's like the very uptight, like strict, like everything has to be down to the T, like type of mother, and Amethyst is just kind of like we're gonna go and destroy like all this stuff and like be reckless and eat junk food. And then Garnet is kind of just like, I feel like Garnet is in between both of them. Like she knows when to be like stern, but she also knows when to have fun and like tells the other two like just chill, like relax, let Steven handle this. He knows what to do. And I think a lot of times Garnet is sort of the one of the characters, because I think Greg does this also as one of the characters who just like grounds Steven and also like really is a calm way for him to really explore his talents. And then Greg, I do appreciate Greg because Greg is kind of, because if you're a crystal gem, you're saving the world and you're facing all these like very serious like life-threatening like things and like learning about your abilities, and so that, you know, especially for a half human who's like 13, 14, it can be stressful, understandably. And so Greg is kind of the one who takes him out of that seriousness and also like provides a separate space for Steven where he could still be a human, like he could still be a child, he could still be a human and still explore a lot of that. And I think Greg is kind of just like, I just want you to be happy, so I'm going to support you. And then there's also a scene where Greg gets a friend named Connie, and so they want Connie's parents to meet Steven's parents, and so these are all Steven's parents. And if you're like, and Connie has two parents, a man and a woman, and so I just thinking about like having a queer family and like, you know, and then like having your partner have like a heterosexual parents, like imagine like trying to like the like anxiety that could come from that. So the original solution was to pick one of his mothers to like go with Greg to meet Connie's parents. And then Steven said, that's not right. They all need to be there because they're all my mothers and they've all raised me. And it was like really beautiful and I cried. But their solution, I'm going to show you a video, was to fuse and become one giant mother. And this is it.
We've been waiting for nearly 20 minutes.
Hi, Connie. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Maheshwaran.
Thanks, honey buns.
You're welcome, Greg.
I'm Greg Universe, and this massive drink of water is my wife, Alexandrite.
Hi.
I hope this place has unlimited breadsticks.
Don't be rude.
Isn't my wife Orion?
So tell me, how did you two meet?
Huh? How'd we meet? Well, we,
They met on a roller coaster. She was too tall to ride.
I remember it like it was yesterday. Right, honey? Sorry.
Have some more breadsticks, dear.
What is it that you two do for a living, Mr. and Mrs. Universe?
Well, you see, I own a local car wash, and my sweet, dear wife here,
My mom works on an apple farm.
Heads on the table.
She uses all her arms to pick apples out of used trees.
well, you know what they say, an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Yes, I hate doctors. I'm a doctor.
Things are going pretty good so far, huh?
Steven, are you kidding me? What is this thing that you brought to dinner?
It's my family. It's all of the gems fused together into a 6-armed giant woman.
Why couldn't you just bring one of the gems?
'Cause that would be a lie. Your glasses.
What about them?
I healed your eyes.
So I'm going to stop it there. But yeah, so you could see here like the pressure to really like be normative and really like try to like fit himself into that mold when it's obviously not working. Like he has a mother with 6 arms and like multiple legs at this point, and so at the end of the show, like Connie's parents do meet all 3 of the gems, and then it's like really nice, and they're all bonding, and it's like a really nice moment, and it's like a learning moment also to like just be true to who you are and like kind of be true to what your family is, whatever that looks like. And Steven Universe does that a lot, where they don't have a strict definition of what family is. So throughout the show, they bring in other characters, and they're adopted into this sort of like this like very large family structure. Like, you know, later in the show, they bring in 2 characters named Lapis and Peridot, and they're kind of like the aunts who are living on their farm and stuff like that. And it's but it's like, yeah, it's like, you know, they just leave a lot of room to like really play with the idea of what a family is, and like that a family isn't always like who you're born into. Sometimes you can find other people like Connie, even though like Connie and her like become Steven's family also, and like things like that. So that is it for Queering Family.
Fusion! Okay, so you saw Alexandra, which was the fusion of Pearl, Amethyst, and Garnet in the clip that Romelia just showed. So fusion is a metaphor for many things: relationships, love, consent, trust, etc. In order to understand the importance of fusion, we must first unpack what it all means.
There might be an ad.
On the Gulf Coast, new ExxonMobil projects are expected to create over 45,000 jobs.
Welcome to fun.
These are jobs that natural gas is helping make happen, all while reducing America's emissions. Energy lives here.
Hello, this is Garnet, and today I'm going to be teaching you about fusion. A fusion is made when 2 or more gems combine into one, like me.
Fusion is very difficult to do. Gems must be in perfect sync physically, mentally, and emotionally.
The new forms have extra body parts, and the combined heights and strengths of the fuses. The fusion is hard for gems that have trouble collaborating.
I'm great at collaborating. Is that right?
But I get along fine. There are many reasons to fuse.
Yeah, but what's the best reason to fuse?
That's easy. The best reason is...
So fusion is important because it is one of the ways that the show discusses consent. So here we have a series of gifts. If you follow the arrow, it should go in like a Z. So in season 1, episode 12, Giant Woman, Steven asks Pearl and Amethyst to fuse in order to defeat a giant bird after they fail to beat it on their own. In the first gift, we see both Pearl and Amethyst bowing, consenting to fuse with each other. In the second gift, we see the gems perform the gem dances in preparation to fuse. So Pearl's like performing ballet, while like Amethyst in the third gift is like more freestyle and like hip hop. In the third gift, we can see that Pearl is put off by Amethyst dancing because Pearl doesn't really approve of a lot of things. So looking at Pearl's face in the third gift, we see that they are no longer in harmony with one another emotionally. Thus, they fail to fuse in the fourth gift, as you can see by their gem lights literally turning off. While both individuals consented to fuse in the first gift, we can see that the consent was not the same by the last gift. This scene is important because it demonstrates that consent between individuals needs to occur at all levels, steps, and stages, not just before. This was just one of the ways that the show discusses consent with audiences like children. An example of a harmonious consensual fusion is Garnet. So this next video is from season 1, episode 52, Jailbreak, where we discover that Garnet is a fusion of the gems Ruby and Sapphire. It's important to note here that fusion between different types of gems is looked down upon by Homeworld, which is the universe in which the gems come from. So Garnet's entire existence is unwelcomed. So here's a video showing how badass Garnet is as the embodiment of not only a harmonious fusion, but a beautiful queer relationship.
This is Garnet, back together. And I'm never going down at the hands of the likes of you because I'm so much better. And every part of me is saying go get her. The two of us ain't gonna follow your rules. Come be without any of your fancy tools. Let's go, just be in you. Let's go, just 1 on 2. Go ahead and try, hit me if you're able. Can't you see that my relationship is stable? I can see you hate the way we intermingle. But I think you're just mad cause you're single. And you're we're gonna stay like this forever. If you pray to the world, we'll just come back you up. And we'll always be twice the gem that you were. I am ready.
You both don't know what you're doing. That's wild. Location. Turn us around.
This is who we are. This is who I am. And if you think you can stop me, then you need to think again. Cause I am a feeling, and I will never end. And I won't let you hurt my planet. I won't let you hurt my friends. Go ahead and try hit me if you're able. Can't you see that my relationship is stable? I know you think I'm not something you're afraid of. Cause you think that you see what I'm made of. But maybe you're more than like them. Everything they care about is what I am. I am their fury, I am their patience, I am the conversation. I am and it's stronger than you. And it's stronger than you.
So you just saw the beautiful video, like talking about their entire existence. And so you can see Ruby and Sapphire twirling at the bottom. They're in love with each other, which is just really beautiful. And so the quote in this slide is, "I am their fury, I am their patience, I am a conversation." And so this is like one of like the most talked about lyrics from the song "Stronger Than You" that was just performed in the video. And so the way that I interpreted this with the video is that like Garnet is all of Ruby and Sapphire's experiences, right, as like a queer relationship. And like I am their fury, I am their patience, right, like being patient with like people not understanding or being very unwelcoming of what being queer is like. And so the last part, I am a conversation, the way I interpret it, right, because this is all just like how we as an audience connect with the show, is like not only is this a conversation within the show of how like fusion between different gems is like unwelcomed, right, and like I connected that to like queerphobia, but also like Garnet's entire existence within the show is a great starting point to have a conversation with children about queer relationships, especially in a positive manner, like Garnet, who is like Stephen's, my favorite mother of Stephen. And so fusion is a relationship of based on love and trust combined together in a physical form, and Garnet is the embodiment of all of this. Lucian has The Answer, which is a book based on an episode where you hear about how Ruby and Sapphire fell in love. So if you want to see that, Lucy, you can pass it on if you want.
This is also the copy of the Women's Study Center,
Yeah.
so if you ever want to take the time to read it or check it out, it will be here, but I will be passing it around so you can look at it.
So the show uses fusion as a concept to teach children about how they should approach their own relationships. Another reason why Steven Universe is amazing is because of how the show uses fusion to explore non-binary gender identities. Okay. So in season 1, episode 37, Alone Together, the Crystal Gems try to teach Steven how to fuse. He learns to fusion dance and ends up dancing with Connie on the beach where they spontaneously fuse, creating Stevani. And so this was the first time where like a gem has fused with a human, right? And so like I remember in the show, Amethyst is like, this isn't supposed to be, right? Like a reflection of like how fusion amongst like different types of gems or even like humans is unwelcome. Again, queerphobia. And so the reason why I wanted to talk about Stevani in particular is because Rebecca Sugar talks about how Stevani is non-binary and doesn't have a gender. It's Stevani is the embodiment of like adolescence and like the fears of like your first relationship, and so like Stephen and Connie go through all of that together when they're in Stevani. So I thought that it was really beautiful, and so as we've seen time and time again, representation of different identities is very important, especially with children. And so Fusion within Steven Universe presents us with different topics like consent, queer relationships, and non-binary gender identities. Is there anything else you want to this part?
Only that if you watch the episode where Stevani first comes into play, you see Steven and Connie like practicing, like consent practicing, like they continuously check in with each other to make sure that, like, oh, like, is this still okay? Are you okay with this? Like, do we need to unfuse? And I think not only like showing the adults practice that, but also showing the children practice that is also like very important, because it shows like smaller kids and like adolescents that, you know, this is something they can also do.
And they say this is a show for children. Okay, so my section that we're going to be looking on is bodies and representation, which has really been touched upon through Fusion as well as through Queering Families, because one thing that we see is that throughout this series, with different characters that are being introduced and even different fusions that are introduced, there's never one kind of set way of what a body should look like. Like, there's different representations and there's different visions of what each person looks like. And that's a very important thing just to instill in children, just because we live in the 21st century where a lot of fame and a lot of like focus and tension and pressure that's put on children is kind of coming up with this secure body image, and it usually gets policed by like the media, but also our families in as well as friends and kind of like what we surround ourselves with and the environment. And so like one beautiful thing that's really touched upon is not only body issues, but also the beauty of looking at different bodies. So in the next slide, there's a clip from season 3 where Peridot, Steven, and Amethyst kind of go back to Beta Kindergarten, and it's talking about where Amethyst kind of originates from Earth, and she was made in the Prime Kindergarten, which was more so one of the first extraction sites during the war that happened between the Gems and Homeworld. So this kind of talks about a little bit about body issues, and it has a really good like synopsis of what the idea of kind of like Homeworld and kind of like gem extraction kind of plays a role into this. Yeah.
New Lego Marvel superhero sets. This is a cracking space base. Oh no! Watch out, Star-Lord! You can build a Milano to help save him! Fire the step shooters! Food is free! Attack! Looks like the Guardians just saved the galaxy again! You can build something super with new Lego Marvel superhero sets! Each set sold separately.
Here we are, Jasper's Origin, the Beta Kindergarten.
Am I underwhelmed? It's pretty bright out here.
It's red. No kidding. Red sandstone. This is what I'm talking about. We're lucky this place hasn't blown away. Beta. Am I right? It gets worse. I mean, this place has got the right growing conditions in a pinch. Yes. But it's too small. It was obviously a total rush job.
Rush job?
Halfway through the rebellion, Homeworld scrambled to generate extra soldiers on the ground. Look at this. The holes don't even line up. It's like they just threw injectors down wherever. Oh, and that one? This car
carnelian came out sideways. How could she not? The walls are curved. What a joke. Man, I had no idea. I tell you, it really makes you appreciate the prime kindergarten, Amethyst. Your kindergarten was so thought through. Sure, you might have spent extra time in the ground, but everything else is stacked in your favor. Great location, great holes, even spacing, consistent depth. A real kindergartner gets it right.
What happened to this injector?
What you want to see is a vertical alignment. No angle in the exit. A clean, strong silhouette. None of these holes come close.
What about that one?
Jasper.
For full episodes of your favorite shows, download.
So, a quick synopsis of that episode, it was talking about how Amethyst was going through body issues, and because she was born in the prime kindergarten, one of the things that was kind of looked down upon was how much time she spent in the ground actually popping up, because it would take about, I would say, a light year in their time, so that would be, if we had to translate it to our time, it would take about a year for each gem to pop out of the ground, but Amethyst took longer. And everyone got A, tired of waiting, and B, kind of looked down upon it because it took her more time than the rest of the gems to come up. So with this episode, it kind of explores like how Amethyst kind of has this issue because she's so small, and she thinks that it's due to the fact that she spent so much more time in the ground. But then Peridot kind of has this way of trying to be a good friend, but also she's that friend that tends to like be more honest than like helpful sometimes. So they were talking about her in comparison to Jasper, who is a bigger gem, who's also seen in the Someone Like You video fighting Garnet, and how like she is known as like this big, strong gem due to like her origination and everything. So one of the things that pops up from this is kind of seeing like body image, kind of seeing how that is an issue. But in the next slide that I'm going to show, we're going to see how it actually helps to form these different types of families that we don't really tend to think about, and talking about how a chosen family is a thing and how you don't always have to be born or biologically brought into a group of people to see them as family.
Go on.
He found me out. Amethyst! You won't believe what I've been through. Amethyst, they're really, really great! What?
Your faces. You were right. That was excellent.
I'm sorry, I had to. What are you wearing? Greg, this is a good look for you. What is going on? These amethysts, they're all from Earth. They're from the prime kindergarten. Wait, XL.
Yeah?
You guys, I'm in 8. Tell them.
The amethyst under me never popped out. We're all waiting and nothing.
I'm in it, and that's if I'm cutting it, and that's me. This is MT, this is MT.
I'm Jay.
Oh, geez, sorry, I'm worse than Holy Blue.
Aren't we all?
Prime. You amethysts are so clicky. Scootie's at Jasper. You're a transfer from the beta kindergarten, too. Hey, where's Carnelian? Celebrating. I'm not the
This is unreal.
Hey, please, if you don't mind me asking, we really need your help. We came to...
So this clip is from That Will Be All, and that's more from the 4th season. But it talks about how Amethyst kind of, well, each of the characters kind of go through their own character development as well, which is like seen throughout the series, which is why you should watch the series. But one of the things that we see Amethyst kind of going through a lot is that due to the fact that she was born on Earth and is like the only like gem besides Steven who was born on Earth of the crystal gems, she goes through a lot of self-doubt and like it's a lot of like identity issues. So like this clip is really interesting because you see her kind of like coming into herself and seeing how she's really learning more about herself, because all she knew really was that she was from the prime kindergarten. She didn't know about her cut or kind of like anything about her history. So like seeing how happy she is and seeing like how she's really like adopting more family and seeing how that is really bringing out a part of her shows, like how we all are shaped through identity and how we're also shaped by the people that we surround ourselves with. And we learn more not only about ourselves, but about each other. And how that beautiful thing called love, which is like a huge theme throughout the show, finds different ways to reiterate itself and different ways to connect the characters that you would see and think like, how are these characters have all linked? But also it talks about like, briefly mentions how there's a hierarchy kind of within Homeworld and within the gems, and how like with the hierarchy, it's more so like rubies and amethyst as well as jaspers were seen as more like foot soldiers, and from there it would build up in levels, and then you would have more of the rarer gems like rose quartz, sapphires, as well as talking about opals. And then how Holly Blue is known as more so like an administrative role because she kind of reports to Blue Gem. Each gem, depending on the color that they are, tend to report to a certain diamond, which is the highest in the hierarchy. So far, we have Blue Diamond, we have Yellow Diamond, and we also have Pink Diamond, which doesn't have much history. Watch the series to know more about that. There's a lot of theories going around.
So many.
Too many. But the important thing is that Steven Universe touches on like so many different subjects, and for a children's show, it's so feminist but also revolutionary because it kind of starts a conversation with children and kind of helps them see like a bigger view of the world that we don't tend to talk about. And it really is a good starting point conversation tool, not only for children but also for adults who have like issues with talking about body image, but also talking about really important mental illnesses like PTSD, and also talking about like abusive relationships as well. And like it's just a beautiful show that kind of shows not only like the coming of age story of a child kind of like being thrown into the situation and being open and accepting of it, but also shows that there's a lot that we still have to learn not only from each other but also from the earth itself. Which is beautiful. Questions. We don't bite. We promise. We'll answer anything and everything we can to the best of our abilities.
I want to hear a little bit more about when Stefani interacts with the rest of the world, and how the rest of the world interacts with Stefani, and how that relates to like a new clear relationship at the beginning and how they're first.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question so everyone can hear it in the mic?
Okay. So the question was like talking about Stefani at the fusion and talking about like their interaction with the world and just like how the birth of like a new relationship and everything kind of plays with like the social standards and norms of the world. Is that correct? So there's a lot to unpack in that. When I say this show literally will have you watching episodes over 5 times, just like what did I just see? Like, and you learn something new every time. But with Stefani, one of the things that I wanted to highlight, it kind of talks about also how societal norms kind of get applied to even fusions, like just gender-wise as well. Because one of the things I want to kind of talk about is like in that same episode, they end up going to like a rave kind of style party that's in the warehouse because I think it was Honey's older brother, Sour Cream was DJing. Literally, the randomest names, like it's so funny. You're gonna be like, what? But yeah, Sour Cream was DJing and inviting people. So Stefani ended up going, and one of the what's the guy's name?
Kevin.
There we go. So one of the guys who represents a few people on campus that I can think of, but no shade, no shade. Talking, and he decided to hit on her because he thought he was like this big thing and everything, and kept calling her she. And it was really funny sitting there watching it because it talks about a little bit about like non-binaries and how we tend to get erased, and also talking about how it also was really interesting to see how Stefani like stood up to themselves, and seeing how they were like one of the things they said were like they were not him or her, they were an experience, and kind of like showing how like basic respect is for everyone. Like that's not something that you have to pay for. That's not something you can buy. Like just when someone says no, they mean no, and kind of like how that needs to be applied. And once again, consent coming and being like a really big thing that needs to be important and needs to be really just emphasized throughout.
Something that I remember from that episode is like up until that point, Stevani was kind of walking through the world like really carefree and just like enjoying life. And there was a moment where the whole year and experience thing, like where Garnet like sat them down and said, "You are like, what was it like? You're not one
or the other.
You're not one or the other. You're an experience. So you're like both of them, and like you're both of them and so much more." And so that's sort of what outlook Stevani took on as like they went into the world, and they're and you could kind of see where people like as they walked and they like people would just like stop and stare at Stevani and just it was never really like it was still staring, and it was still kind of so staring in itself is an issue, but like it was never really like predatory until Kevin came in, and like Kevin like representing like masculinity and like entitlement to like people's bodies and stuff. And then Kevin actually comes back in an episode, and you kind of see how much like that experience with Kevin affected Stevani, where it like really bothered them, and it really like shook their sense of like stability and like how they felt safe. And so they like were their solution was to try to beat Kevin at racing and stuff like that. And at some point they realized like I don't need to do this, like Kevin's like not important to me. And I think that type of growth was also important, where you got to see like like the stages of it, and it came back later, and like you saw them work through the anger and work through the hurt, and then like ultimately like heal.
After seeing How Black, I'm interested in the animators. If you know much about, you said a little bit, Lucine, about their founder, but more about the background of the animators and what they're aiming to do with this, and then also maybe if there are fan pages for people who are fans of this show and how to access that.
Okay, so someone needs to cut me off because I actually am doing a lot of research for this because I plan to write my thesis on this. So with Steven Universe, for the background of the actual animators, they tend to be like kind of more quiet people, and we're still trying to learn more about them, but they tend to have more queer animators on the team, and also a lot of allies as well that are really supportive of like just the queer community and everything. Because Rebecca Sugar, one of her main goals with this was to inadvertently introduce people to not only like what it means to be queer, but also showing that queerness is not like otherness. It's not necessary to kind of exoticize and kind of otherize and isolate people just because of who they love and who they are. And so, like, one of the things that she went into was kind of showing that even through a kid's, knowing that education from a lower level through a kid's perspective can also reach adults and be one of those things that kind of shifts our movement and shifts, like, our viewpoints as a society of, like, this is what we are, and, like, we can accept people and kind of move forward. And with one of her main goals that she had stated was really just showing a child, like, really just showing a child growing up in, like, almost a similar kind of take of like 21st century with like so many issues being brought up and so many like problems and also so many new norms coming into, and like how now the LGBTQ is getting like a lot of movement and a lot of recognition for like so many of our rights are finally being realized, and like people starting to see that there's no need to have this fear of like, but also it talks about like just fear in general, like all the phobias and how we have this tendency to kind of separate and really just divide people and kind of like compartmentalize people, and showing that love and like we have one thing in common, like all of our differences should be celebrated, because at the end of the day we're all human and we're all people, and we're all trying to make just our living situation for ourselves but also for others a better space. And with that, like she took a very active role in making sure that the people who are involved in this project are not only people who need to be seen, but also people who need to be recognized. Like she makes sure she invites a lot of influential women of color, people of color in general, but also like making sure that her whole team is mostly women is really important, and kind of like adding in a way adding that feminine aspect of it, but also showing that just because of who's involved in this doesn't take away from the message, and it doesn't do anything to diminish the value of the show. And also the music is one really big thing that doesn't tend to get looked at, like especially with the ending credit song. That is a very, very moving song that doesn't tend to get much recognition for it, but it's talking about like how love and just really like love is this big, beautiful thing that tends to sometimes push people to see not only their faults, but also to work harder at becoming a better person, not for themselves, but also for others. I hope that covers, like, there's also, for the fan pages, oh my god, there's so many fan pages. Tumblr is your best friend. Like, I say that very hesitantly with like a grain of salt because there's a lot of conspiracy pages. I will have to compile a list because I know there's so many that I follow, but I can't recall them off the top of my head. But there's also a Steven Universe Wikipedia page, like just really focused on like people from the fandom just giving like information and facts about the page. Steven, it's wikia.stevenuniverse, I think, .com. But if you look up Lori Steven Universe Wiki, it's like the first thing that shows up in Google. But a lot of those pages are really interesting, but they also kind of do a lot of like what we kind of discussed, but in more detail, talking about like how Steven Universe is revolutionary and kind of like a good way to have conversations introducing like just queerness as a whole.
Then Allie.
Oh, perfect.
You go first.
So you're talking a lot about breaking down norms, breaking down these kind of tradition. I've seen Steven Universe, so I kind of was wondering if y'all can talk about how it talks about colonialism and trying to break down colonial practice and like breaking that down within oneself, but also like, yeah. Sorry, I know it's a big question, but I know y'all can handle it.
I can start this off. So the homeworld gems, right? The bad ones. They're the ones who started, who colonized Earth in the beginning, right? And created different kindergartens, which is where like they cut gems, right? Because they're like focused on like colonizing the rest of the universe. To like their advantage, they're just using like Earth's resources. And so this is where the crystal gems, who are a rebellious group, right? They're the rebellion against homeworld gems on Earth. They fight. They're in like a war. This is where Steven's mom's rose quartz and like her soldiers come into play, right? The crystal gems. And so this is just like where colonization is introduced, right?
I think a lot about Rose Quartz and Greg's relationship in colonization, where Rose Quartz is a crystal gem and Greg is a human from like the the planet they call it, like her people colonized, and how it plays out and in Steven, and just like I forget the name of the episode, but there's an episode where Steven and Greg are talking about the crystal gems, and like Greg explodes, and it's like they invaded us, and kind of gives another image of the crystal gems, where before Steven had only seen positive things, like, oh, we're like here to like protect the earth and protect people and stuff like that, and then Greg is like, yeah, they do that, but they also still invaded us, and then I think Steven starts to learn from that point. Steven learns a lot more about his mother's role in that, and like his mother, like who had a big role in it, because Rose Quartz was pretty high up in the hierarchy, and so her rebelling was a really big issue, a really big deal, and so Steven and I think a lot of the confusion about identity, like having like an identity based on someone who's like both the colonizer and the colonized, like really plays out in Steven, where he's really confused like about his relationship with his mother, who would represent the colonizer, and even just like going back to family, like he's supposed to have this attachment to her, but he doesn't know her, and the more he learns about her past, he realizes that maybe she wasn't the best person like all the time, like a lot of her relationships were really what's the word, manipulative, yeah, especially with Pearl and even with Greg. And like with Greg, their relationship, it started off where she was just amused by him because he was this little human, and kind of just like would just watch him and just like watch and see what he does, because it was like so interesting and so different from what she did, like from what she was used to. And like she even said, like, like at one point I believe she said like they have flashbacks to when Greg and Rose Quartz like were first met, and she at one point she said something along the lines of like, I don't really know how to love, which is which is very true when you think about like colonization and how a lot of it could also just be a lack of love on the part of like white colonizers. Yeah.
You've given us a lot of great material about what Steven Universe gets right. Is there anything that you feel it's not quite getting right, or something that you're a little bit critical or skeptical of the way it might handle something?
Being a big fan of the show, one thing that still kind of like I'm trying to deal with is like there's also kind of hints of colorism in the show. And talking about like how they have a tendency, like especially with like the more darker skinned characters, they tend to either be seen almost in a way like secondary characters, or more so kind of like out of I don't know the word like more so like dangerous and crazy characters. And one way to talk about that is kind of like talking about Sugilite. And Sugilite is like the fusion of Amethyst and Garnet. And she was voiced by Nicki Minaj, which was really interesting. But she is kind of seen as this dangerous kind of fusion, which is not more so like when it comes to fusing, that's one of the fusions that doesn't tend to be recognized as much. Like even when we get into like talking about that episode or like when she's first introduced, like you see Pearl kind of has like a very strong visceral reaction of but you see that Pearl has a very strong like visceral reaction of like kind of trying to dissuade both of them from having that combination. And like she like when they do come out and everything, and so like introduced to like Steven, she had like you see Pearl go kind of like into overdrive of like taking Steven out of the situation, kind of like trying to protect him and everything. And like when Steven's like, what about Sugilite? How is she gonna get home? Pearl's like, she can get home on her own. And it's kind of like there's this distancing that happens because, and in a way kind of represents like one of the things that I saw was kind of like how like society tends to see like women, especially women of color, and like one of the big stereotypes that I see with that is kind of like the mad black woman, and kind of giving recognition to that and seeing how that's still a problem. And it's something that I kind of question because I tend to see like there's a nuance between with it because like for example like Garnet in a way also represents like black woman, and she's really strong in kind of like who she is, how her mentality is, and how she kind of like portrays herself, and that in a way also kind of gives like this nuance of like issues because I see it as well as like Sapphire side of Garnet kind of tends to be more in control than Ruby's, and like just when you see them first like defuse for the first time and you kind of like see Ruby has this tendency of like being a hothead and kind of like being really really like angry and kind of like emotionally moved, while Sapphire is like more so logically moved and everything, so like with emotions kind of like hard for the both of them. And like that's really an interesting kind of issue that comes into mind that people tend to see and kind of like brings a lot of debate into fandom, like a lot.
A part of the show that frustrated me was like was the character Bismuth. So the crystal gems, right? They're like this whole army, right, who fought against the homeworld. So the only survivors are Pearl, Amethyst, and Garnet, right, today. And so then in the gem universe, right, when you like if a gem gets injured, they don't like die all the way. They just like go back into like the shape of their gem, right? Because they can't like project their humanoid form. But when they die like completely is when you shatter their gem so that they can't do that anymore. And so in the show, right, the crystal gems keep saying that like we don't shatter gems. That's not what we do, right? Like that's like not human. That's not good, right? And so that's like something that Steven like has learned over time. And so in the episode where we're introduced to Bismuth, Bismuth is just a gem, right? And then Stephen like wakes Bismuth up, and so Bismuth is like this like really butch gem, crystal gem, who was part of the army. And so she's like big and like strong. She has like locks, right, like rainbow locks. And so she's like really cool as a character until like it gets really dark. And like the reason why I don't like the way that they treat Bismuth is because Bismuth was the way that Bismuth wanted to win the war. Sorry, I know like a lot of this is probably not making sense. So
watch the series.
Bismuth's idea of winning the war was shattering gems, right? Because she's like, this is the only way that we can win over homeworld. And so Rose Quartz was like, this isn't what we do. And so like Bismuth was seen as this really radical character, right? And also like Bismuth has, I want to say she has like purple skin. So like I was like a woman of color, right? Like you're demonizing women of color for being too radical again and again. And so what Rose Quartz ends up doing is like casting Bismuth away into just her gem form. And so like that's one part of the show where I was just like, oh, damn it, like why did you do this to me? With like a character that like I identify with, and just like I wanted to see like Bismuth, I don't know.
We never know.
We never know. Also like how forgiving Steven is. Like he gets upset sometimes, but it's never longer than like the 11 minutes of the show, right? Like
no, seriously.
You can sit in your anger, like this is okay to teach children, but like he always forgives like people or other gems who do him wrong. I'm like, this is way too fast for me. Like we need to teach children that it's okay to be upset.
I see a few questions, so I'm gonna say what bothers me quickly and then move on to those. They don't. I think the show it hasn't done it yet, and it's like been like what 4, 5? How many seasons?
Four. We still have
4.
5
That and they haven't really gone into like the dynamics between the crystal gems and rose quartz. Like they've gone into it a little bit, but like especially like with Pearl, for example, like they were in a relationship and it was a really manipulative relationship, and Pearl ultimately like completely changed her way of life and like everything she was just to be with Rose Quartz and like was infatuated with her. And I think a lot of that needs to be developed more, and a lot of like how like Amethyst and Garnet interact, because we kind of get it with Bismuth where we see that that Rose Quartz was the one who essentially like what's it called, bubbled Bismuth and like locked her away. So like we see like Rose Quartz is shady, but we don't really talk about it. I think there's a question here.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about Lapis and Jasper and Malachite and like the relationship.
Yes.
So you watch the show?
Oh yeah.
So the question was if you could talk more about Lapis and Jasper and the fusion Malachite. It's this one in the bottom right.
Okay, so I would say Jasper and Lapis are kind of a good example of an abusive relationship, and how even though like we have the tendency to see that abusive relationships are like extreme and bad and everything, that they also, there's a reason why these relationships are kind of like an issue, because even in the abuse sometimes both sides don't see it. And because like, for example, Lapis backstory kind of plays, I feel like it plays a big role into it, because she, in essence, she was a gem who was trapped in a mirror because of her wisdom and her control of like the ocean as well. So what happens is that Stephen happens to find the mirror, and he finds and starts talking to Lapis. And the thing is, like, Lapis at first is shattered. Like the reason why she's still in the mirror is because her gem on the back is actually shattered. So Stephen finds a way. So long story short, there's a lot to it, but like she's finally released from the mirror because Stephen being such a kind heart and everything. But with Lapis, because of her entrapment in the mirror for so long and everything, that kind of plays a huge part on her psyche and kind of like her mental state, because in essence she's like had a lot of time to be kind of like separated and alone and kind of like dealing with that. And so like her output on the world and her viewpoints of like love and everything are kind of misconstrued. So then with Jasper is such a difficult character, because you love to hate her, but then you also yeah. You love to hate her, but also you have like the sympathy for her because she's been conditioned by homeworld to know that like winning is everything. So she doesn't know what love is as well. So when she's kind of introduced to Garnet, Jasper being, she kind of sees like how Garnet was able to defeat her through her fusion, and and latches on to Lapis, and Lapis sees it as a way of kind of helping and kind of trying to save the world because she finds this newfound love for Earth. So Malachite is their fusion. Malachite is an unstable fusion, and there's a lot of battle in between who is controlling the fusion. And there's a lot to unpack with that fusion, so that might have to be another day. Just because like there's so much that plays into that power play. Like you'll see it throughout episodes, like I think it's like a 3-course episode where you see like Malachite kind of fighting because Lapis is kind of holding on to Jasper so that Jasper won't be able to cause more pain. But then Jasper's also seeing it as a way of they can have more power together and be able to kind of like destroy all the people who put them through so much. So.
And really quickly, because we're running out of time, the aftermath too, once Malachite is finally separated, is also something that really stood out to me because there's like a moment where Lapis is like talks about missing Jasper and like missing that connection, like missing having someone there, and I just really think that's like really representative of an abusive relationship where you become like really dependent on that person, and like even though they were like it was awful, you still like want them there. And I think, and a lot of like Lapis's storyline, like Lapis is not a happy character. Lapis like doesn't take shit. Like she's one of the few gens who doesn't take any of like Steven's bullshit. She's like okay Steven, whatever. But a lot of her storyline is her healing after that, and her like kind of like talking about hating the earth and like slowly starting to love it and stuff like that, and like slowly becoming comfortable with her new like position and place.
To the point where she goes back to Jasper one more time before she makes that healing process. So it speaks a lot to like abusive relationships and kind of like that mentality, and kind of trying to also understand what goes into them because there's a lot more there than we think.
Thank you.